Assalamu alaikum guys, here we are on chapter 7 lesson 4, and behind me you see my board. We're talking about surface area of prisms, and for today we're only talking about rectangular prisms. So remember, rectangular prism is, looks like a tissue box, just a regular type of tissue box. This lesson, guys, we're going to cut it into 2 days because the triangular prism is a little bit tricky. So inshallah, I'll try to make this as easy as possible, as I've been trying for the rest of the videos. And from your response to the attendance question for yesterday, it seems that you all like the pace of the class for the most part and the amount of work that I'm giving. Remember that usually in a regular class setting, I would be probably giving you 12 to 14 questions, and now I'm cutting it down anywhere from 6, 7, or 8 questions. So let's get with it. Here we go. So surface area of a rectangular prism. Remember, surface area is basically just the covering of the box. Whether you're talking about the bottom and the top, which are the bases if it's sitting this way, the sides, and then also the front and the back. So surface area is when you cover something, whether you're wrapping it as a gift wrap or whether you're painting it. So difference between volume you fill something with within a container, and surface area is when you cover the whole cylinder or rectangular prism or triangular prism. So the basic formula, guys, is S, and S stands for surface area, is 2 capital B plus PH. All right. So the B, again, it still is the area of the base. So you have to look at the image. How is it sitting on the image itself? The bases would be the top and the bottom on how that image is sitting. All right. So it has 2, obviously, top and bottom, therefore the 2. Now the P is the perimeter of the base. In other words, how do I find the perimeter of this box? I go all the way around, right? The front, the side, the back, and then back again to the side. So perimeter is the distance all the way around the base. And then in this case, we're talking about the area of a rectangle for the capital B. So ask yourself, how do I find the area of a rectangle? Well, area of a rectangle is LW. The next thing is perimeter. P is perimeter of the rectangle. What is the formula for finding perimeter of a rectangle? If you remember from your younger years, P is equal to 2L plus 2W. So all you have to do, guys, is come and substitute those values. Now, if you have different ways of finding the surface area because you've learned another technique, I'm okay with it as long as you get the correct answer. But I do want you to start getting used to the formulas that we present in the lessons. So to break down the lesson itself, or the formula rather, S is equal to 2 bases. And we said that the capital B, since the base is a rectangle, we're going to substitute the capital B by LW. So LW. And then the perimeter is 2L plus 2W. So be very careful with this part of the formula because it can get crowded. Now, the capital P has to be held in parentheses. Don't drop it out of parentheses until you evaluate. So this becomes 2L plus 2W, and don't forget that you still have the H right there, so the H drops down, okay? So this is the formula that we're going to have. Again, let me write it a little bit better so it's not too crowded right there. S is equal to 2LW plus, in parentheses, 2L, so 2 of lengths and 2 of widths, and then the height. Now, one of the things that you're going to be asked to get 2 answers today. You're going to be asked to determine the lateral and the surface area. So this formula alone, guys, is the complete surface area for the complete 3D figure, okay? Now, the lateral is basically, if we're looking at the tissue box, the lateral is everything but the top and the bottom. In other words, the front, and then the back, and then the 2 sides. So basically, if it's kind of saying like, what would be the label if we go ahead and undo this box? If I have a label here, 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 and here, when I spread it out as a net, what would be the area? So basically, it's not including the top and the bottom. So the lateral area is basically this part right here. This is the lateral area. So when you're working out, I'll show you where to stop so you can answer part of it and then continue from there. So in this lesson, basically when we're talking about lateral, we represent it as LA. That stands for lateral. And this is lateral area. And like I said, the lateral area is always your perimeter times the height. So that's the most important part of this whole lesson. Keeping track, number one, common mistake, kids drop the parentheses on the 2L plus 2W. Second thing is they forget the difference between where is the lateral area and the surface area. The whole formula is surface area. The lateral is just that pH, that side of the pH. So let's turn you to the other board, and hopefully the glare of my lamp is not on it. And I think we're okay. So let's say, for example, we have this image. Remember, I've told you to draw the two boxes, connect the corners, and then to give it depth, you can go ahead and do dotted lines on the lines on the inside so you can see where, there's depth to it. All right, so now the front of it, we're gonna call it 6 feet, or label it as 6 feet. The depth of it, how far, how wide it goes back, is going to be 2 feet. And then the height of it, how tall it is, it's going to be 3 feet, okay? So we start with a formula. S is equal to 2B plus PH. Now remember the two bases, the base is the rectangle, right? It's sitting on the bottom as a rectangle. Now, before you start this problem, guys, I would suggest the best thing for you to do is determine what's the length, what's the width, and what's the height. Now, usually when you're finding volume, you don't have to worry about the LWH. Any number, regardless of how you multiply it, you can put it in any place, and if you mistakenly put the length for the width or the height for the length, it still works out. But in surface area, you have to be very careful. Now, the length is always the distance that's in the front. So I'm going to label that as my L. The width is always how far back it goes. And in this case, 2 feet. Okay? The next one, the height of it is 3 feet. And what I'm going to do, guys, just to save a little bit of space, I'm going to move that 3 feet to the back part because I'm going to need it for the space of... Now remember that this is 3 feet from basically the bottom right here to the top right there. It's still the height, even though it's in a different position. And I'm going to erase it from here because I'm going to need the space for the formula, and I don't want to write over it and then confuse numbers. So let's go ahead and break the formula down. Remember, it's two bases, and we said that the way you find the area of the base in a rectangular prism, since it's sitting on a rectangle, okay, it's sitting on a rectangle, is length times width. So length times width. Now the perimeter, if you go back to the previous notes that I just gave you a little bit ago, how do you find the perimeter of the, the prism, or in this case the tissue box? Remember I said it's sitting on rectangles. The perimeter is the distance all around. We have two lengths, the one in the front and the side, two widths, the one on each side, okay? So the capital P is 2L plus 2W. Now I'm going to mark it in red to emphasize you cannot drop anything. You cannot drop that parentheses until you do all the math inside of there. Don't forget that you have an H as well. So bring the H down. Now since you pre-labeled, and I forgot to label my height, guys. I think if y'all would have been in class, y'all would have said, Missy Dunn, which one is the height? There it is. So if you pre-label, it's so easy to calculate now. You just drop in all the numbers and do step by step by step. So here we go. S is equal to 2. The length is 6, so I'm going to substitute 6. And then the width, if we come back, which one is the width? We labeled the 2 feet as the width, so it's going to be 2. And then the 2L plus 2W, remember that is in parentheses, and I'll emphasize that in red. And I'm hoping that I will not squeeze everything out. But 2 times 6. And actually what I'm going to do is this, guys, because usually when you have parentheses with inside parentheses and so on and so forth, it gets a little bit confusing with the number of parentheses that you have. So I'm going to put a bracket. So it's 2 times 6, which is the length, plus 2 times the W is the 2 feet. And then I'm going to close my parentheses. Now don't forget the H. The H is the height, and it's a 3. So I'm hoping that you can see that little 3 out there, and it means multiplication. I just don't have room to put it in parentheses, but even though these brackets right here, it's understood that you're supposed to multiply whatever the sum is on the inside. After you do everything, you're supposed to multiply that by 3. So let's go ahead, get your calculator out, go ahead and multiply 2 times 6 times 2. For this part, you should get 24. Okay, now in the brackets, remember that the brackets, maybe I should put them in red so you can remember that it's kind of acting like the parentheses. So inside the bracket, you cannot take the bracket off until you do all the math. So here we go. 2 times 6 is 12. And then 2 times 2 is 4. And I put the end of the bracket back. That 3 drops down. Remember that we are. Now I can put the parentheses just to remind me I have to multiply. And then go ahead and do the math in the brackets, which is considered kind of like a parentheses. S is equal to 24. And then go ahead. What's 12 plus 14? 12 plus 4, it's 16. Don't forget that you have to multiply by 3. And then 16 times 3 is 48, right? So S is equal to 24 plus 48. And then the last step is go ahead and add them up. S is equal to 72. Now let's go back to our instructions. Our instructions said determine the lateral and the surface area. Remember that I did say that the lateral is always your pH. So everything on this side of the plus sign, whatever you end up with, and as you follow along with the math, here is your LA. That is your lateral area. And that's basically the distance around times the height. So if I have to answer this, my LA is 48. We are talking about area, guys. We're talking about feet. So it's going to be feet squared. Now, this 72 is the total surface area, including the 2 bases. So S is equal to 72. Again, don't forget that you're talking about feet squared. And it's that easy. The tricky part is right here, just following that parentheses. Be careful, don't drop the parentheses. Put it in brackets. Now, another thing that you can do if it just gets too crowded for you, you can go ahead and calculate all of this on the side on an extra sheet of paper, then bring the numbers in. And that's acceptable as well. If you don't like the formula this long and it's a little bit intimidating, then you can calculate on the side, P is equal to 2L plus 2W, do the math, then come back and substitute the capital P for the numerical value. Don't forget that you still have to multiply to the H, which is 3. So I want you to try another example, except for this time, your measurements are going to change, and we will say that the front here is 7 feet, and then it goes back, far back, 6 feet, and then the height of the whole prism is 5 feet. So you might want to go ahead and stop the video, substitute all your values, use the formula that we used. Remember, before you start, the number on the front is your length, The how far back it goes on the bottom is your width. How tall the prism is your height. Now go ahead and use the formula, guys, and substitute all your values and work it out. You can pause the video if you want, or you can just go ahead and wait for me or go along with me and solve your problem as we go. I promise it's not that hard, guys. It's just that parentheses of the 2L plus 2W on the perimeter that can be a little bit, you know, make you lose track of numbers. So for this one, 2. The L we said is 7, so substitute the 7. And then the width we said it is 6. So don't forget that all of these are being multiplied. Now remember that we did say put it in brackets because it's considered kind of like a parentheses. And 2, the length is 7, 2 times 7, plus the width is 6, so 2 times 6, and then close your bracket. And then what's the height of the whole prism? The height of the prism is 5. So don't forget that we're multiplying that 5. Now start doing your math. Use your calculator. Go ahead, 2 times 7 times 6. You can use the calculator, and for those of you that are mental math, probably 7 times 6 is 42, times 2 is 84. So we get 84 on this side. Now remember, we are not done with that bracket yet. Don't drop it. So 2 times 7 is 14. And then 2 times 6 is 12. Now put your bracket to close it off. Don't forget that at the end, when you sum this up, get the sum, you're going to multiply by 5 before you add. So go ahead and add what's in parentheses, drop the 84 down, plus, and then what's 14 plus 12 is 26. Don't forget that you have to multiply by 5. S is equal to 84 plus, and then take your calculator, 26 times 5, you should get 130. Now go ahead and add. 84 plus 130 should give you 214. Now go back. What is the lateral? Remember that your pH, everything that's on this side of the plus sign, this is your LA, okay, your lateral. And then this is your surface area. So we can say LA is equal to 130. We are talking about area. Don't forget it's a square unit. And then surface area is 214 feet squared. So these are your two answers. So maybe it seems a little bit easy, and I think it's easy as long as you label your image and then you use this formula. It's just a matter of doing PEMDAS. Now, how does this apply to real life? So if you need to take the notes, guys, I went a little bit too fast. Stop the video, take all your notes down, and then come back for the word problem. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is find the surface area of a cube. A cube, it's so much easier, believe it or not, than finding the surface area of a rectangular prism. So let's say, for example, you are building a toy box. Okay? What you know is that it's going to be in the shape of a cube. Another thing that you know about the cube is that the side lengths or the sides are going to measure 2.5 feet. So we can say it's going to be 2.5 feet per side. And it's understood that when you have a cube, guys, that every single side, right? Every single side is uniform and equivalent. So that's why you're not going to get what's the length, what's the width, what's the height, because the formula works a little bit different. So the question here is, if you are building your toy box out of plywood, how much plywood do you need to make the toy box? How much plywood do you need to make the toy box? Okay, So here is surface area of a cube. This is the formula. S is equal to 6 S squared. The capital S stands for surface area. The lowercase s stands for side length. And that's that. It's that easy, guys, honestly. So in this problem, capital S is the surface area. Now, why the 6, guys? How many sides, how many faces does a cube have? A cube has 6 faces. It's just, like a regular die that you roll. It's got 6 different sides. Therefore, that's where the 6 comes from. Now, why is it S squared? Well, every side is the same measurement, right? They equal each other. So all you have to do is take side times side. Side times side basically is S squared. So 6 faces of S squared, and in this case it said 2.5 feet. Don't forget that you have to square it. Now, common mistake, a lot of kids multiply these two and then square it. No, the first part is take your 2.5, go ahead and multiply it to itself, get an answer, and your answer should be 6.25. And then the last step is go ahead and multiply 6 times 6.25, and you should get 37.5. What are we talking about? We're still talking about feet squared. So I'm more than sure that you found this one a lot easier, a lot less steps, and not a lot less to honestly think about. Now, just remember, surface area. If you get a real world problem, you might get it something like you're wrapping a gift in the shape of a rectangular prism. How much paper do you need to cover the rectangular prism without overlapping? And by overlapping, they mean, without taking extra paper to cover each and every single side. They're just assuming that you're just covering the sides. I know it's a little bit difficult to gift wrap that way, but, hey, some people might do it. Another thing is, if you are painting, if you're painting a rectangular prism and they ask you how much area are you going to paint over, then it's basically how much are you going to cover it with. So anything that you cover, that's considered surface area. So if you have any questions, guys, don't hesitate to come to class tomorrow. I didn't see some of you all in 8th grade in the morning, so I'm hoping that you're doing well. My 7th graders, you're doing a good job. You're showing up and you're asking questions. So inshallah, see you tomorrow, first thing in the morning. Assalamu alaikum. Have a good day, guys.